Hello and welcome to the Yoga Business Growth Podcast. In this podcast, I'm interviewing Georgina Watson. She's a yoga teacher and a yoga teacher trainer at Inner Yoga in Bali. And we're talking about burnout. As yoga teachers, we're doing all the things and fulfilling all different roles for our students. But despite living seemingly perfect yogic lifestyles, we're not immune to burnout. Listen to this episode where we talk about burnout symptoms, how to overcome burnout, and how burnout has influenced our own yoga practice, how it has led to more self inquiry and reflective practices, and overcoming our egos. We also talk about how we can best serve our students. Let's dive right into it. So, do you want to tell me a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So, my name is Georgina. I'm the founder of Inner Yoga Training. We run yoga teacher trainings in Bali. I'm originally from New Zealand, but found myself with my husband in Bali doing my first ever Vinyasa teacher training over 10 years ago. And organically, that just grew, and we ended up building a yoga retreat center in Bali. But we've been trying to live three different lives. So my husband's from India, we have our business in Bali, and then I'm from New Zealand. So it has been a lot of travel and a lot of commitments and a lot of family commitments and business commitments. And that ultimately led to my first burnout experience.
Mm.
So, yeah, but I find it very ironic that as yoga teachers, we know all the tools. We know the teachings, we know what we need to be doing to look after ourselves. But I think inherently we're drawn to teach yoga because we want to help others. So there's this overwhelming feeling of giving all the time, and that expands out into other areas of our lives. So I think we have a tendency to overgive and forget about ourselves, which I have learnt the hard way and is actually the most important thing I think I have learnt in my own journey is looking out for myself and learning to put boundaries in place.
Mm. Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? Like you seem like you're living the dream in Bali and doing what you love, and still you can get burnt out. It's amazing, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah,
It's ironic, actually,
it is.
and everyone, I think there's this overlay too of this expectation from people that, oh, you're a yoga teacher, you must be living this amazing yogic life and you're perfect and you're meditating and you're doing this and you're doing that. But actually, I found with the yoga teacher trainings, it takes a lot of energy. You're giving yourself the whole time to other people, their journey, their emotional experiences too, because a teacher training in Bali is a very intense 3-week experience. You're with other people that you don't know, you're practicing more than you usually would. So the emotions start to come out, and it's our role as teachers to hold a container for that.
Hmm.
So you're constantly giving to others in that environment. And I think there's an expectation too that that's what people are there for, and that's what they also expect from you. So then it's even harder to put boundaries in place to
Hmm.
protect yourself.
Yeah, sometimes as a yoga teacher, you're expected to wear so many hats. You're not just teaching asana, but you're also a psychologist and a confidant and all these other roles
Yes,
that people
yeah,
apply to you.
everything.
Yeah,
Tourist guide, from
it's
Bali too. Then
those
what
guided
do I
Bali.
do? Where do I go? Yeah, you
Yeah,
end up being like a yoga mom as well to people.
yoga mom. I love that. So, what are the first signs for you in terms of burnout? So, that was a very good question. So I'm gonna rephrase that. Like, how is burnout for you manifesting first?
I
How you?
remember the first time. I got burnt out. I didn't actually really know what it was. So I didn't know what to look for. Um, and it was actually just before COVID. It was around November, and we were just opening a second retreat center in Bali. I just got back from doing trainings in Europe. I arrived back, I had 2 days to get the retreat center ready and start my first teacher training. And I realize now I just took on way too much, and COVID hit, and I discovered that I was burnt out because I had this overwhelming relief that I didn't have to do anything. Everything had stopped, which meant I could stop. I didn't have to answer emails. I didn't have to teach. I didn't have to look after anything. I could just rest. And then I realized in that when I stopped and when I got to rest, how much I had been pushing myself. And when I look back now, I realize it was things like getting overly emotional, that feeling of not being able to cope, the feeling that you were overwhelmed and overburdened. I remember, that training just before COVID that people would come to me and I would just dread them coming to talk to me because I didn't have the capacity in me to be there for them and hold space for them because I couldn't even hold space for myself.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time, I didn't even know what the level to which I had pushed myself.
Mm-hmm.
And now I realize I'm pretty close to burnout again. I've been pretty sick twice in the last 3 months. I'm just getting over something again now. That's a warning bell to me that my body is telling me enough pushing.
Mm-hmm.
Rest. You've got to be still. You've got to take care of yourself. So I think the most important step is actually self-awareness, and having that self-awareness to know to even look for the warning signs, which I didn't have before COVID. So now I know when I'm feeling overwhelmed, I'm getting sick regularly, I'm not sleeping properly, I'm constantly feeling tired, I don't have the capacity to be with people. Those are all warning signs for me that I'm getting close to burnout and I need to do something. I need to change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a big one for me as well. When I don't feel like socializing anymore and all I want to do is just stay at home with my dogs and read and watch Netflix, and like that's just paradise. And once that starts happening, I know, okay, I need to I need to lighten my schedule and not put so much pressure on myself to perform. So it's it's those signs that you learn by going through burnout the first time, and maybe it sounds like your first experience was already pretty severe, so you luckily got the time to reflect and to really feel into that experience, because through COVID you couldn't work anymore. So as lots of yoga
No,
teachers, lots of us suddenly couldn't teach anymore and were without work. And for some people, that was a good thing. So I guess there was a silver lining for you as well.
yes. Yeah. And although, we had no income during that time, I even remember not wanting it to end in a way because it meant I would have to be on again. I would have to be back to doing what I was doing. And, I wasn't ready for that. So it really took me 2 years of COVID to recover from that burnout that I didn't even realize I was having.
Hmm. And that seems like a long time, but it probably was more than 2 years building up to that point, right? Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So,
And when you're running your own business, you're expected to be so many different things. You're you're teaching, you're doing marketing, you're doing social media, you're doing accounting, you're doing admin. There's so many different expectations. And on top of that, you might be a wife, you might be a mother, you might be a daughter. So there's those expectations as well. And I think I find, especially as a woman too, in my own experience, there's certain expectations on me about the roles that I need to play in my family and my personal life. And that adds extra pressure, if you like, into the mix on top of wanting to give as much as you can in your yoga teaching.
And what would you say are the things that you started doing to recover from the burnout?
The most important thing for me, I think, as I said, is first you need to have the awareness of when it's starting to happen. Without that self-awareness, it's just a downward spiral. And the second most important thing is actually putting in place boundaries, because that's the only way that you can protect yourself. Learning that it's okay to say no if you don't have the energy to do something or something's not resonating. It's okay to say no. So you almost have to give yourself permission to step out to protect yourself. I now no longer automatically just answer my phone. If I'm not feeling in a space that I want to talk to someone, I won't answer the call. I'll call back when I'm ready, not when they expect me to be ready. I have sorry, asked other people to teach for me. So I'm not teaching every single month. So I can choose now when I teach, and I can re-energize myself in between trainings. Taking time in nature, that's the biggest thing for me, is walking my dog in the forest, taking that time to really rejuvenate and doing things that I love that are important to me. Um, and then, choosing, how do I spend my day? I know I want to walk my dog and have that time in nature. I want to have a nice, relaxing breakfast, and then I can do work in between this time and this time. So, having a bit of a plan to your day to structure in some dedicated time for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
not just letting the day run away from you and having this expectation that you have to be on emails and answering calls and available 24/7 to people. People will wait.
Yeah.
You'll get back to them when you want. We often think the world's going to end if we don't answer a call or a text or respond to a message, but you know,
Yeah.
your well-being is more important.
Yeah. In that sense, technology, it's on the one hand a burden because you can always be available and people can reach you. It's not like you have a landline at home and you can only pick up the phone when you're there.
Yeah.
You bring your phone with you all the time, so it's now up to you to set those boundaries of, am I available or not? And I think it's beautiful how you explain, like, sometimes I don't even pick up the phone when it's ringing. And that's a long way from, oh, the landline, the phone is ringing, I have to pick up. I have to, attend to this person on the other side wants me and needs me. And to be able to set that boundary and say, no, actually, this is not the right time for me. They will leave a message, and I will get back to them. I think this is something that the younger generation maybe does well. I wouldn't say does better, because I think a younger generation is probably texting a lot more and also have some issues like being attached to the phone. But if
Yeah.
I notice with my niece and my nephew, when when they receive a call, it's like, what? Somebody's calling me. That's so ancient. So it's funny. Yeah.
I notice it too on our teacher trainings that, we finish the day with a beautiful yin practice, which is quite, an introspective practice and we go straight to dinner, and people are just desperate to get to their phones by the end of the yin practice. They sit around the table not talking, just wanting to catch up, wanting to know what they've missed. So that, as you said, there is an ease with having all this technology, but I think we're almost imprisoning ourselves, and we're not giving ourselves the time and space that we need to actually disconnect and be with ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Um, has going through burnout changed the way you practice yoga?
Very good question. I think I've brought a lot more mindfulness to my day. Um, I think my practice has become a little bit more sacred and meaningful to me because, one of the things I tell our students too is that when you start teaching, it's very easy to let your own practice drop. But actually, it's really important to maintain that practice because it's totally for yourself, especially if you've got a home practice. So it's taking that time each day to get onto your mat, to be mindful in your choices in your daily life. So it actually spreads out beyond just the physical yoga practice for me and more into the mindfulness, the self-inquiry, um, and to questioning why I want to do certain things. There's this often automatic response that we do something because we've always done it. But why am I actually doing this? How is it serving me? How is it improving my day? How is it improving my well-being rather than just doing a default, yeah, I'll do it because I've always done it. So I think it's changed not only my physical practice, but who I am in my daily life. So I think, even though something can be a very challenging experience, there's always a gift in the experience if you look for it. So in a way, the burnout has given me a gift because I now know to look after myself in a better way that I wasn't doing. Um, and it's a spiraling too, because when we're burnt out, we're very exhausted, emotional, tired. Then we maybe start to emotionally eat. We make poor food choices. Then we're even more tired. We reach for the coffee, and it's just this downward spiral. So just bringing that awareness and that mindfulness can be such a powerful, seems simple, being mindful and present with your choices, but actually when you apply it day to day, it can be challenging, but it's a practice for a reason. So,
Mm.
but yeah, I think that's some of the most powerful things that I've learned from the burnout. In a way, I'm grateful for it.
Mm. I love the example of coffee because that's a thing that's so habitual in the morning and it's so hard to give up. Also for me, I
Yes.
really struggle with, I love coffee, I love the taste. And also I know that it's not great for me. Like it gets me going, and that I like that kick, but also when I feel that I'm becoming too dependent on coffee, I also know like maybe I'm not resting enough. Maybe there's
Mm.
too much dependence and I should cut back. And then I quit for a week or two or something. I read somewhere that it takes at least 3 weeks for the effects of coffee to leave your body. So it's not even long enough. But when you find that if you don't have coffee, you're getting a headache or you're really having withdrawal symptoms, then that's a sign that it's probably time to have a little break of coffee and really listen to your body, because I think that's also what coffee does. It's masking your symptoms and just giving you that little kick to keep going, even though your body is already telling you maybe it's time to rest. Maybe you've been doing too much. And by constantly ignoring this kind of messaging from your body, eventually it's gonna stop. Your body's gonna be like, no, I can't do
Yeah.
this anymore. And yeah, that's it then. And then there is a
Yeah,
long way back to recovery.
I think the body is inherently intelligent and it's constantly trying to speak to us and send us messages. Again, if we're willing to listen and we have that awareness to listen. If me being sick twice in 3 months, I never used to get sick, very rarely. So for me, that's a real wake up call that, okay, it's telling me something. I need to make some changes in my life. I need to do something differently because it's not normal to me to be sick this often. So yeah, and again, this is yoga beyond the mat too, right? It's developing that deeper relationship with your body and your intuition and your inner knowing so that you can make adjustments, you can stay in balance, you can stay in harmony, and you can look after your well-being when you need to.
Yeah, I agree. And yoga is a practice of awareness, and I think it does have to do with expectation. Like, people expect yoga teachers to be healthy, to be completely aware of themselves. So it's probably like double surprising when you do end up in burnout as a yoga teacher, because, well, you're doing what you love and you love helping people, and still, how did you get to that point where you suddenly don't want to socialize anymore, resent your students because they ask you questions,
Yeah.
or they want to talk to you after class and ask you a question? So
Mm.
there is that shame, I think, also, as yoga teachers, because we are expected to, yeah, to have that deep self-awareness, and to really feel into our bodies and know our mind and all of these things. And
Mm.
that's, yeah, that shame that comes with burnout as a yoga teacher is also a thing that I wanted to bring to the light as well. Like, because when there is shame, it's much more difficult to ask for help as well.
Yes, absolutely. But what I've been interested in recently, Elena, is before I used to want to teach, we run teacher trainings every single month. And before I wanted to teach every single month, even though I was exhausted, I needed a break, I was tired. And it's taken a lot for me to actually hand that over to someone else. And I think too, because I created the training, it's like, handing your child over to someone to look after. But I've also used it as self-inquiry about tuning more into my intentions and my ego. Why do I want to keep teaching when I shouldn't be teaching? For me, then it becomes more about me and me as the teacher rather than the benefit of the students. Because if you're burnt out, exhausted, and you're not holding space in a great way, then for me, sorry, you're letting your ego get in the way of the student's experience.
Mhm.
So I think it's really interesting too to really turn it inward and look at your motivations for why you keep going, even if you're burnt out
Mm.
and tired and need a break. I always say to students, you are there for your students, you're there to hold space for them. The teaching isn't about you, it's about them and their experience on the mat. So it's learning to step away and think that it's okay to step away to let them have the ultimate experience when they turn up to class.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, you think you're serving your students by continuing teaching when you shouldn't, but actually you really shouldn't. You should rest and tend to yourself. And it's like when you're in a plane and they say you have to put your own mask on before you put on your child or your neighbor's mask. If you are not well, you can't take care of someone else. So there is that realization that has to come that you're not serving people when you are running around and doing way more than you can handle at the moment, and something will have to change because you are not serving your students.
Yeah. You almost have to get out of your own way.
Yeah, yeah, it is.
Almost,
It is
yeah.
about ego, isn't it? To I don't know. There is you have when you're teaching, you have the students' eyes on you. Like, they look up to you. You've been through the training. You have all this experience, so there's also part of that, like giving that up is
Yeah.
you have to be very settled in your own being with yourself, that that you derive your self-worth from just being you and not from teaching. And even if you take a break, you're still you, you're still a worthy person. And
Yes.
sometimes we have to like pass our ego that says like, no, I like teaching is fun, like I want to keep doing it, but it's
Yeah. Yes, I guess taking that sense of validation out of the teaching. And as you really pointed out, it's finding that validation within yourself, not from your students. And I think that's the key in learning when to step back and when you need to um, stop teaching and remove yourself to recover. And it's a fantastic time too to spend that time on inner inquiry, asking yourself those questions. Why am I doing this? Why do I need to keep doing this?
yeah. Yeah, and I think also there is no shame in doing something else for a while. If you are experiencing burnout, but you keep teaching because you have rent to pay, you have bills to pay, there are other
Mm.
options that might ask less of you. So in any case, I would obviously seek some help and get rest, but it might also be very helpful to find another job, a part-time job that at least pays your bills so you don't have that stress. And so doing what you have to do so that you can say no to things that are asking too much of you, that are beyond your current capacity, and it will come back and it will be
Mm.
able to teach again if you do that act of self-care first and make sure that you have your basic needs met, like you have shelter and food and sleep and all of that, and then you can work further on the self-actualization. So there's that pyramid, the Maslow pyramid that I have in
Yeah,
mind
it's
when I
great
talk
advice.
about. Yeah.
I think I think too you could expand that out to looking at relationships in your life too, and are they taking from you or are they adding to your life? And actually having the courage to remove circumstance or people or relationships that don't give to you, that take from you more than they
Hmm.
than they give.
Yeah.
I've had, a lot of friendships and relationships that I have dropped off along my journey because I realized that they weren't for my higher good. So I needed to let them go.
Hmm.
So I think to in avoiding burnout, you need to look overall at your life and what can you cut out of your life? Where is it too much? Where are you not coping? What's not serving you or feeding you or giving you energy? And not being afraid to let those things go.
Hmm. Yeah, again, that comes with that awareness that you're building. It's maybe not just the work that you do, but other things in your life that are not nourishing you. And yeah, like you say, taking away from taking your energy away, like letting something external to you suck all your energy so that you end up in burnout.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I try now to use a technique that if I am doing something or I try something, I tune in with myself and I think, is this making me feel expansive or am I feeling contracted? Because again, the body tells you so much. And if it's in a state of contraction, then I know, okay, this isn't for me. I've got to cut this or change it or remove myself from this.
Mhm.
If it's expansive, invite more of it into my life. And I think that's another step two in avoiding the burnout is look for those moments that are expansive, those experiences, those relationships. Because when we're in contraction, our sympathetic nervous system kicks in, it causes more stress, it causes more anxiety, and then that's, another downward spiral as well.
Mhm. Yeah, and to be able to do that, you have to build space into your life when you're not doing something. You're not working, you're not on your phone, you're just being. Only then can you realize these messages that your body is trying to give you. Only then can you tune into, is this contraction or expansion, and to have that little bit of space between this is stepping back, a bit of distance between like always go 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 and doing. And I know people that they can't stop, because when they would stop to think, like everything will come crumbling down, their whole, like, because their life isn't right for them, but they're afraid to stop and make changes because they're afraid that it can't get better, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess, that's trusting the universe that you're supported and you're held and what you need is going to be there for you.
Yeah.
But it's easier to cling to what we have and not go into something new. But I think, when you hit that fear, it's actually a positive sign because it means that you're at your green growing edge and something exciting is on the horizon for you.
Hmm.
And it's
Yeah.
just your nervous system trying to regulate you, thinking, oh no, this is different. What's happening? I don't understand it.
Hmm.
And just have that understanding that, okay, it's my nervous system responding to something new and it's going to be okay. And having the courage to make those changes.
Hmm. Yeah, your body will always, or your brain will choose the things it knows, even if it's not good for you, because the unknown is even more scary. So it means that you have to get out of your comfort zone to be able to find something better than you're currently in. But your brain is telling you, like, no, I don't want to go there.
It's not safe.
Yeah, here it's safe, even though it's not great, but at least I know what's going on. So to again get that space to contemplate and become aware of what it is that your body is trying to tell you is gonna help you on your recovery from burnout.
I think one of the hard things, though, Arena, when you're in that burnout space, is finding the space. It's almost as though you're so overwhelmed, you can't see the wood for the trees.
Hmm.
It's having the tools. Think things like I remember being so exhausted, but I couldn't sleep. And then the more I didn't sleep, the more exhausted I was. So it was like this terrible cycle. So turning to things like yoga nidra when you can't sleep and actually playing a 30-minute yoga nidra while you're lying in bed. And I know the ancient yogis would not consider sleep restful because you can have nightmares and dreams and disturbances. So, simple things like that to be able to create that space that then you can have it to look for the changes that you need to make. But sometimes it's really challenging when you're in it to see beyond it.
Hmm. Yeah, and as yoga teachers, we know of the tools that can be helpful, like meditation and yoga nidra and the more restorative practices, but we're still sometimes reluctant to apply them to ourselves. even though they are
Yes.
very, they're very restorative. So
I
I
know the times that I need meditation the most are the times that I don't want to meditate. So,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's ironic, isn't it? And it's such a contradiction. Lots of people tell me it's a little bit similar, like when people say I can't do yoga because I'm not flexible. It's like, I can't do meditation because my mind is too full and too too many monkeys in my the monkey mind. Um,
Yes.
I can't meditate. So it's just rethinking that, like, and probably also applying a little bit of discipline to, like, oh, my mind is really
Mm,
in all sorts of places. I probably need to make some space and sit and reflect and be quiet so that I can listen, and whatever is coming up can be processed. Because I think that's also, when we are in burnout, our nervous system is too much in overdrive, and we really need
yeah.
that balance between activated nervous system and relaxed nervous system. But even if you sleep 8 hours per day, if you then have 16 hours where you're running around and you're activated, then you are slowly chipping away from your capacity to heal, because you're more activated than you are resting. So even during your waking hours, you need to build in these moments of rest where you read a book or do something that relaxes you, like yoga nidra. And then we can do our running the rest of the time. But if there's no balance and you're running 16 hours a day, for sure, at some point, there's going to be a point where your body says, no, no, this isn't right. This can't continue. And it's giving you all the signals. It has been giving you all the signals, but you haven't been listening. And so the symptoms become worse and worse until you have to listen, until you have no other choice than to listen. So I think in your case, and also like happened with me, if COVID wouldn't have hit, there probably would have been a point where your body would have said, no, I can't do this. And in a sense, it was lucky that you did have that you did get that space for you to rest and reflect. And describing that sense of
Mm.
relief, I can really, I can really picture that. Like, oh, yes, like it's beyond me now. It's not something I have control over, so I can finally let go. So that's
I think that's a really interesting point you raised about letting go of that control. I think society has created this expectation that we need to be on all the time. We need to be achieving, we need to be doing, we need to be productive, we need to be amazing, we need to be good at this, good at that, earning lots of money, have a perfect life. And we actually need to give ourselves permission that it's okay to just be. It's okay to be still, do nothing, take time for yourself. We don't need to be on this constant wheel of productivity 24/7. We can take time out to do what we love. So it's strange that we almost need to give ourselves permission to do that. You know, it's not a natural, inherent thing in us anymore.
mm,
And that's, I think, why I love yin yoga so much, because it provides that space and that quietness and that stillness to have that time for yourself. And that's mainly what I teach. But yeah, I think our modern society has not set up, or is still not recognizing that actually we're not machines. We do need time to rest. We do need time to ourselves. So it's okay, everyone. Just rest.
yeah.
Do something you love do one thing you love every day.
Yeah, here's your permission slip to rest.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I had another thought and it disappeared. I can't do these things live for sure. Like, yeah, it was about my own practice. So, yeah, my own practice has also changed a lot. I used to love Ashtanga and Vinyasa yoga, like the really sort of exercise type yoga, the very strenuous, and I wanted to sweat and I wanted to use my muscles and all of that. And after my burnout experiences, I prefer now the restorative and the yin yoga and the yoga nidra. If I even attempt to do some vinyasa when I am not really, when I don't really have the capacity for it, my shoulder gets inflamed immediately. I do a couple of chaturangas and then the next day my shoulder is like, you're not doing that again. So I I had to really learn to appreciate those types of yoga as well. And I think that was also where my path was supposed to go, to get that deeper awareness, not just to push your body into submission and then you will find, that peace and quiet that comes to
Mm,
mind after a really good Ashtanga class, but trying to get to that point without putting your body through something that it doesn't actually have the capacity to take on anymore. Because if you over exercise, that's also a stressor on your body. So even if exercise is an outlet for your stress, if you over exercise and you do too much than you are currently capable of, that's just going to push that negative influence even more. So accelerating also the road to being in burnout.
mm-mm. I remember during COVID, I'd hear these stories about people say, "Oh, but I got COVID really badly. I'm young, I'm fit, I go to the gym 7 days a week and I do weights and I do this and I do that." And I remember thinking, your body was probably inflamed to start with because you're pushing it through all these very, intense workouts and it's not having time to rest and just rejuvenate. And it's actually one of the reasons that I developed our training the way I did, which is a combination of vinyasa and yin, is I would see all these people come for a vinyasa or ashtanga training and they had very busy lives and they would be exhausted and then they'd push themselves through an ashtanga or vinyasa practice to get that high and then they're still exhausted. So our training is very much about finding that balance using the two practices and actually knowing what you need to practice when. So if you've been on the sofa all day and you're feeling lazy, then maybe you need a bit more of a dynamic practice. If you've had a really stressful, busy, active day, it may be a yin practice. So actually being able to recognize what type of practices you need when to keep yourself in balance and harmony, not just going to the default, oh, I get that endorphin high when I go for a run or I do this or I do that, but actually, again, listening to your body. What does your body need? And I think if you actually ask your body and you sit in the silence and wait for the answer, it will tell you.
Mm.
But yes, it's again, to me, it ties back into that. Oh, if you're not doing a really active yoga practice, then you're not doing proper yoga. You're not being productive in your yoga practice. You're not furthering your practice. You're not nailing the next pose in the Ashtanga series.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's getting out of that mindset and just allowing yourself to be, and acceptance and accepting when you need to stop when you need to take care of yourself rather than pushing against it and having resistance because you don't feel valued if you're not achieving or doing.
Hmm. Yeah, there's that mindset of performance. Like I have to ace this so that everybody thinks that I am a great yogi. While
Yeah.
actually that's just gymnastics that you're doing.
Yeah.
You cut the awareness of your body completely, then you're not doing yoga. You're doing plain exercise, and you might be doing some stretches, but that's not what yoga is. At least that's my understanding of what yoga is.
No. And I think unfortunately Instagram has made it even worse. You know, yin poses on Instagram don't look that sexy because they're people on the mat in stillness, their head down, not really doing anything. Whereas, you know, the more dynamic vinyasa, ashtanga wheels, they look better on Instagram. So again, it's that influence of how we perceive that we should be practicing yoga or what we think we should look like when we're practicing yoga.
Hmm.
So I think, yeah, Instagram yoga has a lot to answer for in that regard too.
Yeah, definitely. And also, I think what we'll see is a wave of people in burnout, and it's already, especially in corporate environments, but also that's why I wanted to do this podcast, because I have also experienced it. You've experienced it. I know lots of teachers who have experienced burnout. So it's just gonna keep rising until we are all listening, because yes, when you go through it and you have the personal experience of burnout, you know, like, okay, I have to do better. I have to make some changes. And you can tell someone I think you need to make some changes, or I think you are showing some symptoms of burnout, but that person might not be ready to listen at that point. So they have to go through it themselves. And it's only when lots and lots of people are going through this,
Mm.
have gone through this, that the collective awareness of, okay, maybe we don't need to be running all the time, and maybe we don't, we really have to get rid of that performance mindset, and not just intellectually, but also really implementing that in our lives.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons I really wanted to come on today to share my experience because I think, you know, it's well known in the corporate world, people get burnout. I think it's much less known in the yoga world and probably something that teachers feel that they might be a bit ashamed of or they shouldn't have experienced because they should know better. They should have the tools available to them. Their practice should help them through. So maybe there's a reluctance to share it or talk about it. So I hope by you and I sharing our experiences, it can become more known and more widely accepted, and that we, as teachers too, can look out for each other, can check in with each other. You know, how are you doing? Are you still okay with teaching your classes? How are you feeling? I think it's important to have that community, whether it's in a studio that you're working in or with friends who are teachers, and just normalize it. Because I think given what we teach, there's maybe a bit of a stigma attached to it
Hmm.
that we shouldn't experience it.
Yeah.
But as you and I know, it's very real and it does have a big impact on your life and your teaching. And yeah, it's important to recognize the signs, I think.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. All
And
right.
how did you experience your burnout? What was your story?
I my burnout started my first burnout experience was when I was in corporate, and then I actually had I probably had a burnout with every single job that I had. I'm always getting to this point where I was healed enough, and then I would change job and then do exactly the same thing. And at a certain point, I realized, I think I went on a yoga retreat and I realized this can't be. I wasn't a yoga teacher at the time, so but I knew I didn't want to continue with my life the way I was living it. I was 33 at the time. I was This was the third or the fourth time that I had been in burnout, and I knew I had to make some changes. So I went on a sabbatical. I did yoga teacher training, started teaching. I had a lot of rest as well while I was traveling. I had this vision that I would visit all these countries in Southeast Asia, and then as soon as I was by myself, I just stayed put and didn't do anything but surfing every day and resting. And yeah, I also needed that time to heal. So when I got burnout when I was a yoga teacher, I was astonished. Like, wow, how is this possible? I'm doing what I love. I
Yeah.
made all these changes not to be in this place anymore, and now I'm here again. So I still haven't learned my lesson. I still need to make changes in my lifestyle. And that's when I started also to more focus on Ayurveda and really learning about like proper lifestyle. And um, that's been an interesting journey as well.
Mm. I found, yeah, it's quite emotional too, I've found.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it is. um, I think, I don't know, that performance drive that comes from something, and I think deep down it's you feel like you have to prove something to someone, even if that person is
Mm.
not around anymore or doesn't matter anymore, but there's still that learned behavior that is keeping you stuck in the same rut. And to get out of that, there's only one way according to your body, and that is to burn out. Okay, we've been talking for quite a bit already. So I is there anything else that you wanted to add to this conversation?
Yeah, I think it takes a certain amount of strength to step back and put boundaries in place. So I would just like to say to anyone who maybe think they're on the edge of burnout or they're feeling exhausted or are in it, don't be ashamed. If you recognize it, there's a strength in that. There's a strength in being able to say, no, it's not okay anymore. Either I need help or I need to make changes in my life, and honor that, honor what you're going through, and don't just try to brush it aside because it will get worse if you don't address it and it will keep coming back. So take care of yourselves. We're all worth it. No amount of teaching is worth sacrificing our own well-being for. And actually, you're doing your students a service by stepping back and taking care of yourself.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much, Georgina, for coming on the
Thank you,
podcast.
Arina.
Where
Yeah,
can
it's my pleasure.
where can people find more information about you and the teacher trainings that you do in Bali? Beautiful
Yeah, so
Bali.
our website is inneryogatraining.com. And as I said, we run yin and vinyasa trainings and some standalone yin trainings. And I really would love to share with, as many people as possible about finding that balance and using the practices to keep yourself in balance every day, not just, making yourself look great on Instagram. That's one aspect, but the more important aspect is maintaining your well-being and balance. All right, thank you so much for having me.
You're very
I really
welcome.
enjoyed it.
Yeah,
So,
me too. Thank you so
yeah,
much for sharing your experience so openly as well and honestly.
of
And
course.
yeah, I hope lots of people
Yeah, I
will.
hope it helps some people.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say.